this is our first also annual Dyslexia Awareness Program here at the library. My name is Crystal. I'm a children's librarian, and I work here in the children's department at the main library. Before I do any more talking, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping types of things. Restrooms are available here at the main library. Just across the hall, there's restrooms and water fountains there. Feel free to get up and, do whatever you need to do. If you need to leave or come back in, that's fine. Both the doors in the back are open, this door is open. And if people are late, you just kind of make room for them. There's some seats up here in the front, I think, that are still open, and in the back. So, thank you everybody for being here today. I would like to recognize our speakers. I'm very, very happy to say we have an excellent panel speaker here for you today. Scott Forsythe is really the brains, stand up, Scott. The brains and the reason we're having this program today. So, and you'll learn more about Scott in a little bit. We also have Lori Gray here. Lori is a local author and attorney, and she'll be talking to us about bullying. And then Kristen Baxter is here. Kristen Baxter from the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana. And also, we have a tutor here. There you are. She's not going to be speaking, but she has information on tutoring resources. So, if you look through your agenda just very quickly, I'm just going to walk through this real fast. Kristen will be speaking first, and then Lori. I'll get to talk to you a little bit about the library and what we have to provide. Scott has a lot of great info to share with you. At 3:30, we're aiming for kind of a more open kind of program where the speakers will each go to a spot around the room, and you can talk to them one-on-one and ask specific questions of whatever it is you're interested in. So at 4 o'clock then, Scott will be heading upstairs to the Young Adults Department on the second floor, and he will have some of the assistive technology and things available for you to look at and try hands-on. So that's kind of the overall plan for the afternoons to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing. And with that, I will introduce Scott and let him take the floor.
Thank you. Hi, like she said, I'm Scott Forsythe. I'm 16 years old, and I'm the founder of the Dyslexic Kids Support Organization for children and teens with dyslexia. Thank you all so much for coming. We're very fortunate to have some outstanding speakers here today who are, without question, the best in their fields. Like she said, again, there'll be a question and answer period at about 3:30, so please hold any questions you have until then. We're also privileged to have, again, Tina Bailey from Specialty Tutoring.
It's from Another Chance to Learn.
Our first speaker is someone who has been supportive of me and my work from the very beginning. Her encouragement is to help keep me going and has done so much to me. She is from the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana, an organization that is filled with dedicated, creative, responsive, and incredibly knowledgeable people. It is my honor to introduce Ms. Kristen Baxter.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I've been Scott for doing this today, and Chris letting us in. Like Scott mentioned, my name is Kristen Baxter. I'm from the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana. We are a non-profit organization located on the north side of Indianapolis. So about 2 hours away from here. So it's exciting for me to branch out to other parts of the state with events like this today. So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to just take a brief moment. I'm going to talk a little bit about dyslexia, some common characteristics. We're all going to feel like we have it when we leave here just because there are so many characteristics. And we say it's like a snowflake, no two are alike. And that's very true with dyslexia, which can make it very challenging then to find remediation for children and adults with remediation or with dyslexia because they all need such different remediation. I have a PowerPoint here. Give me a second. And I do have copies of my presentation over on the table right over there. So feel free to take one when you're done. I'm going to go through, again, relatively fast. But so when we start start to dive into dyslexia, the name itself is difficult to say. It's even more difficult to spell. It can be a little overwhelming once you first hear about it. Who here has experience with dyslexia, whether yourself or someone you know and love? All right, so that's a pretty good show of hands. It's branching its way out. The International Dyslexia Association, they are kind of our governing body on dyslexia in our country, even though they are international as well. This is their definition of dyslexia. So dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin. So we're talking your brain here. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities. How anyone with dyslexia can even begin to figure this out, I'm not even sure. So difficulty with your language, how you're learning to spell, decoding. They love to use decoding in this. Decoding is how you read. So you'll see that term a lot. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other, so on and so on and so on. So you can get lost. They then throw in more about secondary consequences, may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. What they're missing here is math. People can have math issues with dyslexia. And that a lot of the times gets left out, and you will hear language. It's a language difference. It's a language disability. Math is a language, although we don't think of it as such. It is a language, and you can find individuals with dyslexia who can read a book from front cover to back cover, but they can't do a simple math problem. And we do see a lot of that. So here's the definition that I love. Dyslexia, difficult language. Bottom line. So reading, spelling, writing, expressive language, receptive language. So speaking and listening. Yes, I know, I just said math is a part of that too. But most commonly you can see it reading, spelling, writing. And most commonly it's going to start showing up around 4 or 5 years old when you begin to learn that phonological awareness, which is the sounds of letters. And that's when you'll start to see difficulties there. So we do have a lot of related disabilities. The big one, ADD. We've all heard of ADD, ADHD. That's a big hot button. It has been for the last 10 years or so. This ADD tends to go with dyslexia. We're not sure why the poor children get that doubled on top of them, but they do. I'm a camp director, and about 75% of my campers come in with this diagnosis every summer too. So syndrome of disordered learning and disruptive behavior that is not caused by any serious underlying physical or mental disorder. You have dysgraphia, difficult in learning the physical act of writing. A lot of times, children with and adults with dyslexia, their handwriting, they have a very hard time making it legible. Dysorthography, difficult learning to spell. Again, these words are awful. Dyspraxia, partial loss of the ability to perform coordinated movements. Hyperlexia, an unusual language disorder in which individuals have precocious reading ability. So, all these big words that go along with this. So, we're going to get into some language learning difficulties with people with dyslexia. Difficult getting information to long-term memory. Short-term, great. We see this a lot in children. They'll study for their spelling test. They'll memorize their spelling test. And then it's on Friday, and then by Monday, they lost it all. So that's a very common one. Difficulty retrieving information from memory. So if you give them directions and you give them a five-step directions for anything, they're going to remember the first direction. And that starts to lead to a lot of frustration. Why didn't you get your room clean? Well, I was told that I had to put up my Xbox, and that's where I was still. So you'll have that. Difficulty sequencing information. So step 1, open the door. Step 2, pick up the ball. Step 3, throw the ball. They could get that out of sequence and it can become confusing. And then difficulty remembering and understanding abstract concepts. a lot of them need a very detailed black and white picture of what you're talking about. And that's why visuals can be so good for individuals with dyslexia. So it can affect vision, reading, and spelling. And these are some symptoms: dizziness and headaches or stomach aches while reading. Confused by letters, numbers, word sequences. Reading or writing shows repetitions, additions. This is a big one. Transpositions. Transposing is when we'll flip letters or numbers. We've all done it. We all have those days where we're doing it constantly. That's a very common one. Omissions, substitutions, reversals in letters, big reversals. P's and B's, probably see that a lot. That's a huge one. M and W, that can happen a lot too. And then complaints of feeling or seeing non-existent movement while reading, writing, or copying. And that can be a really scary experience when you're learning how to read. Again, difficulty with vision, yet eye exams don't reveal a problem. A lot of the time, first steps, parents will take their child to get an eye exam because they think that maybe they're just not able to see the book that well, and that's why they're having difficulty reading. They can lack depth perception, that's a big one, have a lack of peripheral vision, reads and rereads with little comprehension. So they have homework, they have to read a chapter, they have to read it and reread it, and it's not making a difference to answer the questions. And then spells inconsistently is a big one too. So hearing and speech can be affected by that. Easily distracted by sound is a big one. Difficulty putting thoughts into words. And again, I have this presentation over there. Just don't remember all of this. So the big one about writing and motor skills, you'll see sometimes difficulty holding a pen or pencil when they begin to write. As motor skill, gross motor skills can be difficult too. A lot of the times, children with dyslexia won't be the most athletic children, can kind of tend to be on the, and not always by any means, but a little on that clumsy side, and can be ambidextrous. So you'll see them being confused in the beginning. Are you, Scott? So, you know what? I'm already confused about writing, and I can't even figure out what hand to hold my pen in. My handwriting's poor with both of them. That can be a big frustration. So math and time management. Here we get with this. Telling of time can be the most challenging for children with dyslexia and adults for that matter. They'll go more through a digital watch than an analog anytime. That's very difficult for them. Computing math shows dependence on finger counting and other tricks. They'll know the answer, but they have a hard time relaying it to paper. And this is where multisensory learning, any type of multisensory learning that children can get their hands on, very beneficial, especially for math. They need to be able to use their fingers. Touch points is something we've been using for years at camp, and that's, if you Google touch points, that's a wonderful resource when children are learning to add and subtract. Can count, that has difficulty counting objects and dealing with money. Money is a huge one. I don't know how many times I've had a kiddo not be able to understand that a quarter equals 25 cents, but then 25 cents equals 25. So 25 times 4 is 100, but 25 cents times 4 is not $1. So it takes a little more time there. Can do arithmetic, but fails word problems. Of course they're failing at word problems. They can't read that well. They can't comprehend that well. And more our state standards are getting into word problems early and earlier with kids in school. So we're starting to see, fortunately, we're starting to see children who are previously kind of undiagnosed. They're beginning to show signs of it earlier because they're catching up on other subjects, not just their language arts, but math as well. Memory and cognition. Again, excellent long-term memory for experiences, locations, and faces. So anything that they visualized and experienced, that full multi-sensory senses, all of your senses experience, they'll be able to remember no problem. But poor memory through sequences, as we've already said, and inexperienced facts and information. So I could tell them about my trip to the Canadian Rockies and how wonderful it was for me and what the air smelled like and what everything looked like, but they're not going to remember it because they didn't experience it for themselves. Things primarily with images and feeling, not sounds of word. So real internal dialogue going on. So behavior. They can be either extremely disorderly or compulsively orderly. Scott, which one are you? What's the feeling?
Depends on what topic.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So can be the class clown, troublemaker, or too quiet. So we all know the class clowns in our classes that we have witnessed, or when we were in school. A lot of the times, those are the kids that can't read. So when it comes their turn to read out loud, they'll do anything to disrupt it so that they don't have to read. And I'm kicked out of the classroom, even better. I'm as far away from that book that I can't read out loud as possible. Or too quiet. You have them in the corner by themselves, trying to get as far away, as internally far away as possible too. Having usually early or late developmental stages. So it can begin as early as crawling, walking, talking. You get to tying shoes. Again, that's a sequence, so they're not able to get down very well. And then from the ear infection, sensitive to foods, additives, and chemical products. There has been a lot of studies lately, especially food additives, unnatural food colorings, being linked to children and adults with attentive deficit disorder. We have found a lot of our families have taken away the food coloring from their children. They are saying that they're seeing a difference in their behavior. So a big one here, bedwetting beyond appropriate age can be linked to this dyslexia. Usually a higher low tolerance for pain, strong sense of justice, emotionally sensitive, strives for perfection. Mistakes and symptoms increase dramatically with confusion, time, pressure, emotional stress, or poor health. So, and then finally, we have some dyslexia talents because there are brilliant people. Scott being one who have dyslexia. Who can name any famous people with dyslexia that they know of?
Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein, right? He's a big one that everybody always says has dyslexia, and he's pretty brilliant. Anyone else? Anyone heard of Steve Jobs? Yeah.
Bobby Flay.
Bobby Flay, yeah. Another chef, if you're into chefs, Jamie Oliver has dyslexia, and he just recently read his first book and just came out with a book too. Yeah.
Robert Williams.
Robert Williams, yeah.
Jay Leno.
Oh, I'm sorry?
Jay Leno.
Oh, Jay Leno, yeah, that's a big one. I'm sorry?
Henry Fonda.
Henry Fonda, and Henry Fonda writes his own children's books about, yeah, so he's a good one. We have a flyer over on our table of Bella Thorne. Anybody heard of that? Disney Channel? Yeah, she's become very outspoken about her dyslexia, and at such a young age, it's really empowering. So, talents, they're highly aware of their environment, they're more curious than average, highly intuitive and insightful, they can experience thought as reality. Oh, it's really cool, out-of-the-box stuff that if you don't have it, you're really missing out. So that's why they tend to be very smart, out-of-the-box thinkers, very creative. A lot of artists, a lot of musicians you'll find have dyslexia, a lot of engineers. Individuals with dyslexia who don't struggle with math, they're on the complete flip side. They're amazing at math. They can do incredible things there. So there's a huge overview of dyslexia. I kind of proved, I think, with that again, those who are like with dyslexia. On our table, let me talk a little bit about what I do with the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana. Time's about up. I am the Marketing and Communications Director, and then I also run our summer camp, Camp Delafield, which is a camp for children 7 to 12 with dyslexia or a specific learning disability. Has anybody here gone through testing process, psychoeducational testing process? Right, that's usually the first step when a teacher comes to you or you start to think that something is wrong with the way that your child is learning or developing. they will send you to or recommend psychoeducational testing. And a lot of times, especially in the schools, it will come back that it's a specific learning disability. Dyslexia, you cannot say in the school, it's considered a medical term. And this is a battle that's being fought currently with groups like Decoding Dyslexia in our state. Has anybody seen the big picture? It talks a lot about the Decoding Dyslexia group in New Jersey, who's really making a lot of headway through Congress. In the state of New Jersey, it's mandatory now for children to get tested for dyslexia. So we are going to start seeing this trend where we are going to catch children sooner and sooner, which can only make a brighter future for them. So the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana, we have 3 core programs. One is our tutoring program, and it is an Orton-Gillingham-based tutoring program. And you'll find out there's others too. Barton is a great one. There's Linda McBell has visualizing verbalizing, which you'll see a lot, Reach for the Stars. You'll hear about a lot of programs, and it can be frustrating at first because you'll get testing and it'll come back, okay, now what do I do? Well, in your area, you may not have an Orton-Gillingham tutor or a Barton tutor, and that can be a very frustrating experience. So the more you can educate yourself, the more you can surround yourself with people like Scott and a very supportive public library, you can start to find your own resources and kind of guide your way. At DII, we do our information in referral source for people. Feel free to call. We'll be happy to direct you in that direction. We offer testing at the Dyslexia Institute as well if you need that step, and we have our summer camp, which I mentioned, which those are our 3 core programs. We also have a parent group, which is amazing, and it is for anyone. You don't have to have any services through us. If anybody's on Facebook, just search Dyslexia Parent Group and request to join. It is made up of people now all around the country, not even just Indiana, but it is a wonderful resource, especially if you're just starting out with this process. Everybody on that page is either where you are currently or they've been where you currently are. They can offer words of wisdom beyond your wildest dreams there. So I really suggest that. And I think, good, I'm right on the money. All right, so again, my name's Kristen. I'll be right over here when we are done, and I'll be happy to answer any more questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Baxter. Now, it is a sad reality that children with dyslexia are often bullied. Our next speaker is an attorney and author who is well known for his thought-provoking and powerful messages against bullying. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Lori Gray.
Thank you very much. I also have a PowerPoint up here. I'm going to pull up and get running. Here we go. Bullying and beyond. I think if we start with identifying, understanding what bullying is, and our purpose in doing that is to move beyond it. And it's only through understanding it and calling it what it is that we can get beyond it. So what I want to do in the 20 minutes that I have, usually I have at least an hour, normally an hour and a half, and often 3 hours. But I've got 20 minutes with you, so I'm going to cover quite a bit of material, but I'm not going to go so fast that you don't get any of my notes. So, and I will also be available for questions afterwards. So what we want to do in the time that we have today is to define bullying. What is it? Talk about the law. Know what the law is and know its limitations. And that could be obviously a college course in and of itself for like 5 credit hours. And so we're not going to go a whole lot into that. But at the end then, and you're moving beyond, is know yourself, which is the ancient Delphi oracle from the wisdom of ancient Greece. One of the best ways to deal with these things is for us to know ourselves. So what is bullying? What's your definition? I go to Scott's website and there's not a definition. I go to the Allen County Public Library, there's not a definition. Is anybody a member of a group, or does your school, does anybody have a definition of bullying that they'd like to throw out for us to look at today? It's okay if you don't, because I've got plenty. And one of the things that we have done generally is consider bullying to be a schoolyard program or a problem, something that happens among kids. But if you think about what bullying is, and when we look at the actual definition of bullying, you'll see that bullying not only appears at school, but it can also happen at work. Right? In fact, in some corporations, I think that bullying is probably an accepted managerial style. Right? Intimidate and threaten and get people to perform at their highest levels. At home, some of the domestic violence that we see involves bullying. Some of the parenting tools that we're given as we become parents are actually bullying. And it is still an accepted parenting style in a lot of circles. And then within a community, there are lots of different organizations that use fear and intimidation and the imbalance of power to manipulate and control people. And that can be bullying. And on a global scale, we have terrorism, right? When one nation bullies another nation, and all of that can be bullying. So let's just kind of take a little poll here. This is a hypothetical situation. No dragons were slain in the making of this example. But we have a dragon with a sticker on the back that says slain. That would be what we would call a target of the bully. One of these people over here who know what's going on, perhaps one is the bully who put it there. The other two may be bystanders, one who recognizes what's going on and one who doesn't. But is it really bullying? How many people say, yes, that's bullying? How many people say, it's probably inappropriate, it's really not that funny, but it's not bullying? How many people say, I really need more information before I can identify it as bullying? Okay? More information. What would you like to know?
Is it a repeated offense?
Is this the first time that something like this has happened amongst this group of dragons? Or is it something that's been ongoing? Okay? What's the relationship between these dragons? Did this guy put it on him yesterday? Right? What's their relationship? And are they friends? Is there an imbalance of power? Is one more powerful? Physically, they all look about the same size, but socially, intellectually, there may be an imbalance of power. And so those are the kinds of things you would really want to know, I think, before you said, that's bullying. And so the problem is that when you see any kind of activity that you think might be inappropriate, you can't really necessarily know in the moment whether it is or isn't bullying. This is actually, the dragon example is pretty close to what happened 2 years ago in February in the Upper East Side of New York City, when there was a 9-year-old who wrote "kick me" on a little yellow sticky note and put it on another student's back. It was an isolated incident. Nobody kicked the student, but that 9-year-old was suspended for 2 days under the school's zero tolerance policy. Is that an effective way to identify and deal with bullying? One of the problems that we're having as bullying becomes a buzzword is that everything is starting to be considered bullying. And at the same time, we've decided we're going to be tough. So we have zero tolerance policies. And when you have a zero tolerance policy and a child who does something that's not appropriate or well thought out, then you end up not really helping kids to learn and become more socially apt. You punish them, you ostracize them, and you perpetuate the problem. And so there's just something that's not quite right if our approach as the adults in charge is to say, we will no longer tolerate intolerance. Can you see the irony or the reason that might not work at a most basic level? Because when we model intolerance of anything, even intolerance of intolerance, we're not really showing kids how to deal with what the real problems and issues are. So let's go back to what is bullying. It used to be that we saw it as a schoolyard problem, usually boys on the playground beating up each other or targeting someone and then having it and moving on. But as we've developed, we're thinking physical, verbal, or social aggression. And actually, cyberbullying is now considered electronic aggression, which is a form of social aggression. But you have to have three things, traditionally, for it to be bullying. You have to have an intent to harm. The person who's committing or doing the behavior, do they mean to hurt somebody? You have to have repetition over time, and you have to have them in balance of power. Okay, so some of the definitions that states and schools are adopting don't necessarily identify these three things that the AMA and Dan Elias, who is a pioneer researcher in bullying, we're starting to be more expansive in our definitions. What I will tell you is if you don't have repetition over time, it's usually because there's one isolated incident that's so serious that we want to call it, identify it bullying right away. And usually if you have something at that level, it's probably illegal, maybe even criminal. But the nice thing about identifying that as bullying is that it helps you to see the pattern. And so if you've had that huge incident and then you have smaller incidents that follow, then you can see where those smaller incidents might be more intimidating and be considered bullying based upon things that have happened beforehand. One of the other problems that we have with bullying is you read the headlines, and this was a headline that I read earlier this year, online bullying rose to 80%. I'm thinking, 80%? 80% of what? That's 80. How could online bullying grow to 80%? So I go to the article, I read it very carefully, and the statistics that they start to cite are that 95% of teens 12 to 17 are online. Okay, I can believe that. Between all of your iPod touches and tablets and phones and laptops and computers and public libraries, I can believe that in America today, if you're between the ages of 12 and 17, you have some means of being online. That's probably an accurate statistic. 80% of those who are online, now 80% of 95%, that already takes us down to like, what, 76%, are actually using social media sites, which is the places that are most apt to give them the ability to do that electronic aggression or cyberbullying. So what you end up with is not that 80% of students are bullied online, but that they're in an environment where they might either be bullying, targeted by bullies, or witness it online, be a bystander. And so you have to really be careful of statistics. And if you see something that's just like, that can't be true, you really need to follow up and see what the sites are. Because a more reliable report is actually the report that they cited, which if you read through the whole Pew Research Center report on bullying from 2011, it was an estimated 8% of teens had experienced some form of online bullying. So I'm thinking, that's not nearly as sensational. I probably wouldn't have stopped and read the entire article and the research behind it if I'd said 8%. But the article never says 8%. It just sticks with the 80% and the high percentages that it pulls out. So online bullying or electronic aggression can be email, social network sites, or instant messaging, and they were containing it to a 12-month period. And so 80% is the headline, 8% is more accurate. But as you go through the research, which I've been doing for several years now, there are some things that I think definitely are true. I think that bullying does persist, and it may be getting worse. As we develop different ways to bully each other and interact socially, it may be getting worse. And I think that the research also shows, as we've heard here today, that children who have learning differences are at a greater risk of being bullied. Still no federal laws on bullying. Absolutely no single federal law to protect a child with a learning disability who is bullied. But there are federal civil laws that do apply if you characterize the bullying as a harassment based on a disability. Specifically, there's Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Title II of the American with Disabilities Act. Dyslexia is a recognized disability under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and disability harassment can also result in that denial of a free and appropriate public education that every student is entitled to. So if you have a child who has dyslexia and they're not getting that free, appropriate public education because of that dyslexia, whether it's that they're not getting the services that they need, or because they're being harassed in a way that makes them feel unsafe and unable to go to school and be productive, then there are federal remedies. Most bullying laws, however, are state laws, and there's an organization called bullypolice.org, and you can go to their website and you can see the specific laws for all 50 states, and they have their own criteria for how they gauge whether this is a good law and not so good law. And you can read through all of that. You'll notice only Montana has an F, and that's because Montana does not have a bullying law, and so they fail completely. Indiana has an A-. They have not updated this website since Indiana law changed in July, and so I don't know if we would still be rated an A- by them. There are some things that improved in our law when we updated it. Specifically, we identify students as targets, which is as opposed to victims, which is good. We included images as a form of communication, so that, like, if you're posting pictures of somebody as a form of bullying, that's included. But there were some other things that were changed, and I've underlined what was changed in the Indiana Code, Section 20-33-8-0.2, which is our state law on bullying. Bullying means overt. Can't do it undercover. It has to be an actual, identifiable behavior. It has to be unwanted. Unwanted is new. It has to be repeated acts or gestures. In Indiana, that single isolated incident isn't included in the definition of bullying. Verbal or written communications or images, physical acts, other behaviors or aggression. So basically, it's any kind of aggression, but it has to be repeated. And by a student or group of students against another student with the intent to harass, ridicule, humiliate, intimidate, or harm. It doesn't have to do all of those, it just has to do any one of those. Harm the target student and create objectively hostile school environment. That's new also. So even though the law has changed, it was amended in 2013, but there are some aspects of the law that are still true. It only applies to public schools. How many of you homeschool your children? You'll be very happy to know that your children will never be bullied under Indiana law, because they're not public school students, and the law only covers public school students. Only a student can be bullied. Only a student or groups of students can bully. So principals can't bully teachers. Teachers can't bully students. Bullying by Indiana law is only a student against another student, and it only applies to events that happen at or impact school. So the other thing about the new law that really concerns me is that it adds that the conduct must be unwanted. Anytime you add an element, it makes something harder to prove. If I have a child who thinks that these people are their friends and really wants to be friends with these people, it's going to be really hard to show that it's unwanted, because they're going to say, well, they're just kidding. No, that's how we are. No, that's what we do. And so that makes it difficult, and it has to create an objectively hostile school environment now. Who gets to decide what's objective? You know? You have a child who could really seriously be terrorized, and you can have a principal that says, that's not really all that scary or terrorizing. Maybe it's not the principal. Maybe it's the superintendent. Or maybe it's the school board. Or maybe it's whoever's wearing the black robe on the day that it actually gets to court. I don't know what an objectively hostile school environment is. So, as a rule, we can't legislate kindness. We can't really just pass a law that says everybody just has to be nice to everybody else. You know, but we can create that kind of a community or culture for ourselves. And we're not going to be doing it by pointing to people and saying, oh, you're a bully. That's bullying. What you're going to be able to do is intervene. If you see something that's mean, you can intervene. And intervene doesn't have to mean that you're punishing somebody or disciplining somebody. It can simply be adopting that, I'm not going to stand by. You know, I see what you're doing. It's mean. It's inappropriate. And that's not how we do that here. That's not at our school, in our home, in this club, in this community. That's not who we are. That's not how we treat each other. And I will not stand by attitude empowers all of your bystanders. The majority of people who see bullying are bystanding. And are the kids who are like, well, you know what? I know it's not very nice, but I'm so glad it's not me. And I don't really want to put myself in there because I don't want it to be me. And so you you get all different kinds of responses. But if you can acknowledge that the behavior is inappropriate, align with the target. You don't even have to say anything other than, hey, you know what, it's time to go to lunch, come with me. Or how about if we all go do this, and just kind of a diversion tactic. Don't confront the bully. Don't get in the bully's face and look for a fight, because you're probably going to get it. And what I learned as a public school teacher back in the 80s was you always catch the second kid, right? You know, the first kid gets hit, everybody turns and looks, and you see them hit the second kid, and they both get expelled for fighting. But the second one is the one that we can definitely say did something that they weren't supposed to do. So, and leaving the area is another thing that you can do. In my home, I have a daughter who's in 6th grade now, and we started when she was very young with all of our play dates and having friends come over and getting into overnights and all of those things. At our house, rule number 1 is have fun. Take a positive approach. And fun means fun for everyone. Okay? So this kind of empowers kids to say, you know what, this isn't fun for so-and-so, or this isn't fun for me. So when they come to our house, we would say, hey, rule number 1 at our house is have fun. And fun means fun for everyone. So if you're not having fun, let my daughter know, let me know, we'll try and find something that's fun for everyone. Also worked for me on occasion. Okay, you guys are totally trashing the basement, and this is not fun for me because I'm the one who's going to have to clean this up. Let's find something that's fun for everyone. So specifically, in the last few minutes I have, what can parents do? Be aware. Watch, listen, document. You know, it requires repetition over time to be bullying. You think you're going to remember it, but it's all caught up in emotions. Keep a journal, keep a notebook, keep something, and write down the date and the specific action. If you end up talking to someone at school or something else and just having a conversation, write down the date and what was said. Ask for an IEP meeting. And then if you're in a public school and you have dyslexia, you probably have an independent education program, and part of that is to help you perform better at school. And if the harassment persists, you can consider filing one of those federal civil cases. But those things take years. Seriously, just to get to court, to get through court, and they can be appealed. And so it's not going to be a solution for anybody today. What kids can do is kids can get a buddy and be a buddy. People that are the easiest targets are the people who are alone. Stand tall and be brave. I don't mean get in somebody's face. In that way, stand tall and be brave. But if you conduct yourself in a way that doesn't say, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid, then you're more likely to get by. And say no firmly. Oh, I skipped avoid and ignore the bullies when practical. There are lots of times when you know there are areas that are less safe than others, and if I need to go from here to there, and if I go this way, I'm likely to encounter a bully, and I go that way, and I'm not, go that way. And if I have to go this way, take a buddy. Say no and firmly walk away. So there's no misunderstanding. And if you walk, sometimes you walk quickly, sometimes you run. Get to a place that's safe, and hopefully you have a trusted adult. But the real moving beyond part, I think, is feeling good about you. When you go to school, you end up with these kinds of tests. Okay, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please combine that 3. Okay, how fair is that? I tell my students, fair is the 4-letter word that starts with F. Don't even use it in this classroom. Like college students and sometimes we use the other one. But if you look at the test that's being set up, who's going to win? The monkey. Who could actually get to the top of the tree that fastest? The bird. But because it's not climbing, I'm sure that would be cheating, and the bird would be disqualified, because that's how schools are set up too often. So what you can do is you can know yourself, because the challenges that you have through being different, whatever they are, you saw the list that was up on the board earlier. For every challenge, the other side of the coin is you see things differently. You do things differently. You have special abilities that make you different than everyone else, and that's a good thing. And when you know that about yourself, to know yourself is to love yourself. And when you know and really start to see yourself as somebody who is a very valuable person, other people start to see you that way too. And so every child, every adult, every one of you has greatness and something really special and unique and different about you. Whether you have dyslexia or whether you don't. And when you find those things, you kind of connect to your passion, become who you are, and are just less likely to be bullied. So there are a couple of websites that I've talked to through here and that I've used. And I'll have a list of those at the table. If you want those, I can actually even email you the PowerPoint. If you want to take a card and send me an email, I'd be happy to do that. There's my contact information, and I ran over, sorry, just by a couple minutes. So thank you very much. I will be at the table and happy to take answer questions. Should we call them?
Okay. Next, people with dyslexia are normally not fond of libraries. Let's face it, they're filled with what's perceived to be an enemy, books. But libraries, especially this library, are some of the best places for children with dyslexia. You won't find a group of people more dedicated toward helping children with dyslexia than you'll find right here. One librarian in particular, our next speaker, has devoted an enormous amount of time toward developing programs and resources for children with dyslexia. She made this conference possible. She and another librarian, Eric Carr. He's out of the desk right now, I believe. You might glance him later. Have helped me create the nation's first dyslexic-friendly book list for libraries. It is my pleasure to introduce Chris Lowe, a librarian here in the Children's Services section of the main library, to talk about library resources available for dyslexic patrons.
Provide materials and resources for whoever is here in our county. So Scott has been a huge help to us as we found we had a lot of holes in what we had, and we didn't have a lot of knowledge about dyslexia and what was needed for them. So I give Scott a lot of the credit for what I'm going to tell you about today, because he's really the inspiration for this. The first thing I want to tell you about, obviously the library has books, you probably knew that, but Scott put together a dyslexic-friendly book list, and I have copies of them, paper copies of them on the table over here on the floor that you can pick up after this presentation. Basically what Scott did, he went book by book through our early reader section, and there's Eric back there. And that's Eric Tarr, who's also a librarian here, and he helps Scott with this project. But he went book by book, and he looked at the fonts that the books are written in. And he looked for fonts and background colors that are easier for kids who have dyslexia to see and to read. And now we have a list of books that have good, some are better than others on the list, but they're all good, easier to read fonts and types. There are paper copies back there, but they're also available online. Here, library's website. It's like this on the homepage. If you go to kids, it takes you to the children's part of the website. Click on book lists. There are lots of book lists you might be interested in here, by the way. But if you scroll down, right here, dyslexic-friendly formats, early readers book list. And you can see this is a really long list of books. They're early readers. These are early readers. They're for kids who are learning to read. So, but it just goes on. So that is there for you and really anybody. You know, if you have internet access, you can access this list online. So it's there for the world. And as far as I know, this is the first time this has been done. I don't know of anybody else doing this. We couldn't find it. Well, that's why you did it. Because you couldn't find it online. So that's there. Also, we have, let's see all this stuff. Ebooks. ebooks are really useful for children with dyslexia for the same reason with the fonts. When you check out an ebook, you have the capability of changing the font. So if the font is not something that's easy for them to read, a lot of times the little serifs, the little tags that are on the letters, the shapes of the letters, like the letter G is often kind of wacky in fonts, and the letter A has, the little tails and the hooks and things. It's not the way kids learn to write letters. So you can change the fonts in ebooks. You can also change the background color. You can switch it to like a sepia tone sometimes. You can switch it to black so the letters are white. You can change the size of the letters. You can make them bigger so they're easier to see. So ebooks are a really useful tool. Audiobooks we have. Oftentimes children, and this is true, children with dyslexia and others as well. I'm a very auditory person. It's a lot easier for me to remember a story or something I've read if I've heard it too. So we have audiobooks, books on CD that you can check out, and you can check out the print book as well, and they can listen and read along. There's also a format known as playaways. Playaways come in a case that looks like a VHS tape, but it's not a VHS tape. It's an audiobook preloaded onto this little gadget. There's nothing to download, there's nothing to do except make sure there's a AAA battery, which this one doesn't have. Takes a battery and a pair of headphones. If you don't have headphones and you check one of these out here at the library, show us the receipt that you checked it out and we'll give you a pair of earbuds. They're free, they're for you to keep. Earbuds go right here. So kids can listen to Cats for Sale. That's an old story. It's one of my favorites from when I was a kid. They can read along. Check out the book and read along. And these are very portable. They're tiny. They can fit in a pocket. And kids think they're cool. They're nice. And we have a ton of these. You can search them online. Go on the library's website. Do you have a question, ma'am?
Person have to pass and doubt that there's terrible books after that one.
Stone Arch. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Several of the books. You can if you want to, sure. Stone Arch is one of the publishers on Scott's list of early readers, but they also publish books for older kids. So they're one of the publishers to look for when you're looking for books with dyslexic-friendly fonts. And they, like I said, they publish books for older kids. So you kind of see here, the background of this one is white, so that's not one of the criteria. But the font is bold, there's a lot of space, a lot of white space, not a lot of serifs in the font. So thank you very much for adding that. We can pass those around if you want to. Oh, the next one back. I don't want to steal that from you. Okay, here at the main library and at the branch libraries as well, we have a parent-teacher collection here in the children's department, and we have resources for parents on all kinds of different things, including dyslexia and learning disabilities. There's also, here at the library, Business, Science, and Technology has a huge collection of resources on more of the scientific aspects and research that are done about dyslexia. In Reader Services, which is on this floor, they have resources on kind of the learning tools and techniques to use with kids with dyslexia. And I have examples of some of them, and I can show those to you at the table at the end when we kind of have the open period. Children's fiction and nonfiction, of course, here in the children's department. We have stories, picture books to share with your children to kind of help them learn about dyslexia, or if they have a friend who has it, to help them learn about what it's like for their friend. We have nonfiction books about dyslexia and about learning disabilities, so it's on a kid-friendly level. It's a lower reading level. They can learn about it and get to know it a little bit better that way. Other library resources. Magazines are something that's often overlooked. Magazines are often focused, there's some on the table over there, on a specific topic. They have concise articles. The information is very concise and pointed and direct. And they're expensive to subscribe to, but the library has them for you for free. Just check them out at the library card. DVDs and software. Oftentimes children with dyslexia have learned through different media, different formats. So, we try to have a variety of different types of material that your child learns better using like the interactive elements that are available in a computer software. We still have CD-ROMs here that you can check out. And I think they still work on the newer computers. I know they work on the older ones. But they're still available here. And if that's an easier tool for your children to use, come get them, because we still have them. DVDs also are a great learning tool where visual kids can see things and learn that way. Kids for Kids, if you've seen the blue bags here in the children's department, those are sets of books on a specific topic. So a lot of times kids are very focused on something and they want to learn about that thing. So we have those available for you as well. One of them I pulled was actually about a children's author. We have an author study on Patricia Polacco. Patricia Polacco is a children's author, writes children's books, suffers from dyslexia. But she writes books! It's really great. And she is amazingly prolific. Her list of books is huge. So I like to use her as an example, just to share with kids about what they can do. And it kind of goes along with the list that Kristen had of the famous people who have dyslexia. Custom collections are a service we provide that not enough people know about. A custom collection is a set of books that we will put together for you on whatever topic you need. If we have it, we'll throw it in that collection for you. If you need some books from the Dyslexic Friendly Book List, or you want books with a certain font, you can request that, and we'll grab some for you and put them in a tub, and you come and pick them up. It's really simple. We do ask for a week's notice. We have forms that you can fill out here at the library, or there is also a form online that I can show you. It's via the children's website again. There's a little link on that orange sidebar to get to it. You just fill out your name, address, phone number, contact information, the types of materials you want, books, DVDs, videos, playaways, audiobooks, how many, a good specific description of what you want. Be as specific as possible. You can request titles, specific titles here if you wish. It's a great way to get around the 5 olds rule. So if you need, 20 books and you have 20 titles that you want, you can put them down here, write them down, you can attach them, typed up list or whatever. We'll do what we can. Like I said, we ask for a week's notice, and there's to it. It's really simple, and I think not enough people know about this. So take advantage of the service. It's free. You might as well. I take that back. You paid for this. You paid for all of this. You paid property taxes. So it's not free. But you should take advantage of it. Absolutely. We have a children's computer room here. Kids who are 11 years old and younger have their own place to use the computer and access some of the resources that are available to them online, or they can play games, whatever they feel like doing that day. We have programs here at the library for kids, absolutely free, open to anybody. I have a calendar over on the table over here with the events that we have coming up in October and November. A lot of kids with dyslexia are creative. Kids in general are creative creatures. I mean, you have kids, you work with kids, you know how creative they can be. So we try to provide a variety of programs to appeal to lots of different kids. We have a Lego club that meets monthly. We have science programs. We have art programs. We try to provide a variety. So look around through our program list. You'll find something that appeals to your children. We have study rooms here in the children's department for kids 12 and under and or the adults that are with them. They are reserved for kids or adults who have kids in our department. And we have 2 of them. They're right over here across from the parent-teacher collection. They're available on a first-come, first-served basis. So, if your child needs a quiet place to study, if that helps them, take advantage of that. Come to the library. Get out of the house. Sometimes just a different environment is a helpful thing. Our reading tower is a great place for kids to read. It's the big, giant sculpture in the middle of the children's department. It's meant to be a place to encourage reading and for kids to have fun. Reading. It's a reading tower. The upstairs part is for children 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's intended for kids that age. They're learning to be kind of independent. It's a place for them to kind of get away from mom and dad, but they're not too far away. I mean, I can still see them, and they can see them, but they're still in their own space and kind of have their own place. Downstairs, anybody can sit downstairs and read. Sit in the red bubble chairs or the blue cushions or whatever. So that's what that big building is. Some people call it a spaceship. It's a reading tower. Okay, and then finally, if you can't find it here at the library, you're whatever, you can't find it, please ask us. That's what the library staff are here for. We want to help you. That's our job. If you can't find something, the library doesn't have something, we'll try to get it. We'll do our best. That's what we're here for. That's our job. That's what you pay your taxes for us to do. So, thank you. That's, really fast word with that bell, but I have to tell you today. But I will be available at 3:30. For those of you who came in late, all of our speakers will be available, and you can talk to them. We're each going to be around at the tables on the outside of the room, and you can ask questions. Okay. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you again. Okay. Next, as I said before, my name is Scott Forsythe. Today I'll be talking about the Dyslexia Kids organization. I'll also be discussing assistive technology available to help people with dyslexia and resources for obtaining that assistive technology. You can join me upstairs at 4 o'clock for hands-on demonstrations of some of it. First, a little bit about my journey with dyslexia. For you to really understand my journey, I need to start with where it all began, my parents. I have the best parents in the world, but they're from two very different worlds. My mom just loved school. She was at the top of her class all the way through law school. She loved everything about it. She liked doing research, taking quizzes and tests, she liked being called them in class, and she represented her entire school district in the spelling bee. My dad, on the other hand, had a very different experience in school. Dad had dyslexia, but he wasn't properly diagnosed until high school, and he certainly didn't receive the proper accommodations. Instead, he was separated from the other students and placed into the special kids trailer, along with students who had everything from mild learning differences to severe mental illness. He had so much difficulty in school that he would become physically ill every time he had to spell out loud in class. And he failed the 3rd grade and had to go to summer school. In spite of all that, he went on to become a talented and successful engineer, and then an engineering manager. And he gets to work with organizations like NOAA and NASA. He's now among kindred spirits. More than half of NASA employees are dyslexic. They're chosen for their problem-solving skills and their spatial awareness, as well as others. Now, my parents are different in a lot of ways, but one way in which they're identical is their drive and determination. My mom was driven to be the best in her class, get the very top A. My dad was driven to try harder than everyone else just to survive. The other way in which my parents are identical is that neither one believes in excuses, and they've never allowed themselves, or me or my sister, to feel like the victim. They both feel that life is full of challenges that might seem impossible, but it is our job to meet those challenges head-on. When I was old enough to go to school, my world changed dramatically. The schools, both public and private, didn't share my parents' attitude or their level of determination. We tried both public and private schools, but neither one was a positive experience for me. My teachers noticed from early on that I was different. I couldn't learn to tie my shoes. I couldn't distinguish between left and right. I couldn't write legibly when the other kids were able to write their full names and such. And I couldn't identify, let alone read the letters when the other kids could. Because of all these symptoms, and because my dad has dyslexia, my parents suspected that I had it. The doctors confirmed it. The other kids didn't notice I was different too. I spent a lot of time on my own, away from the other kids. I was beaten up both physically and emotionally. But even though I was the one who was being attacked, teachers considered me to be the problem child. One teacher even asked my parents to permanently remove me from class. I was subjected to all sorts of tests and had all the tutors you'd expect. But that only made things worse. My self-esteem plummeted, and I actually developed a stutter. I wish I'd lived in Indiana. Here in Indiana, you have all kinds of outstanding resources. You have the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana, Ms. Baxter spoke earlier, and you have the Allen County Public Library. You also have Eastern Seals Crossroads. I'll talk more about that organization later. Now, through the school tutors, my spelling and reading improved somewhat, but my parents knew I could do a lot better than I was. My mom decided to put her career on the back burner and devote time and energy toward helping me. It's a good thing she likes to research, because there's a lot of research to do. My parents started to focus their research on finding better methods than what the school was using. They didn't want me to the struggle that my dad had in school. And since Dad works with so many brilliant dyslexics, he spoke with them to find out how they had overcome their dyslexia. My parents discovered that there is no one-size-fits-all tool, strategy, or learning method that works for everybody with dyslexia. For those of us who have dyslexia, that should come as no surprise. We know that the one-size-fits-all approach that most school districts use doesn't work for us or anyone outside the middle of the learning spectrum. It's very important to consider those differences when you're looking for a learning strategy that works for you. People with dyslexia are as unique as snowflakes. Each person with dyslexia has different learning styles as well as symptoms and level of severity of dyslexia. And of course, every single person has different experiences, backgrounds, and interests. Now, in Dad's discussions with his peers, and this was later confirmed by my discussions with the teams who've overcome dyslexia, we found that each and every person who has overcome dyslexia shows a few common traits. First off, none of them saw themselves as being disabled or as being victims who just had a bad hand. Second, all of them are self-aware. They know how their unique brains operate, and they understand their unique learning style. Third, each had a light bulb moment of clarity, where they discovered a missing puzzle piece so that their brains could begin unlocking the mystery of the strange symbols on our pages. They weren't able to read instantly when they had that light bulb moment, but each of them had a memorable aha moment, like the first in a chain of dominoes. That moment was the first in a series of other discoveries that, along with hard work and determination, led to the mastery of reading. That's not to say that these people were cured of dyslexia. Dyslexia is a difference in how your brain operates, not the disease that needs to be cured. But they were able to overcome the negative aspects of dyslexia, where they could function at or above grade level without any assistance. My mom started methodically going through every tool and method that she could find, looking for something to trigger my light bulb moment. We found a few simple tools that could help. First off, we found that the glare caused by black text on a white background greatly hinders my ability to read. Next, we found that the fancy, complicated fonts also made reading far more difficult. Third, fluorescent lighting actually has an effect on my ability to read. If you have fluorescent lighting as opposed to incandescent, it actually makes it far more difficult for me to read the words, and it causes headaches with me and several other dyslexics. One thing that helped a little was the Bob book series. Partly due to the layout and the word structure, but mostly because it helped to build my confidence. They were only a few pages long, and they had very simple words and illustrations. But when I finished the Bob book, I felt that I'd read an entire book, even though it was only a few pages. That was encouraging. Another thing that helped a lot was my pet guinea pig, Lucy. I would read to Lucy, and she would listen. She never judged me, corrected me, or laughed at me. I could read to Lucy without fear or stress. My mom let me pick out any books I wanted from the library. I usually chose comic books, but Mom was fine with that. Her field of teaching reading doesn't have to be from a dry textbook, and that it's far more important for me to remain motivated to learn to read and interested in reading, especially since it's so difficult for me. Anything I wanted to read, she supported it and turned it into an opportunity to learn. I made some progress, but I was still not reaching what my parents believed was my full potential. At the time, like I said, I loved comic books, especially the Transformers comic books. My mom would read them to me, and it was a very special time of day for me. Little did I know I was about to come to an abrupt, painful end. We had worked through all the tutors and methods we could find, and my mom had tried everything she could think of to help me find my light bulb moment. We'd run out of ideas and options. So one day, I received a brand new Transformers book. I was all excited to find out what happened next in the story, so I brought it to my mom to read it to me. She refused. She said that from now on, I would have to read those books myself. I was devastated. I didn't know it at the time, but my mom was devastated too. She didn't want to hurt me, but none of the schools, methods, or tools had been adequate. My parents didn't want me to just scrape by. They knew I could do a lot better than what the schools and tutors believed that I could. No one else had been able to find my life bulb moment. I had to do that myself. It was painful, but it worked. It took me weeks to find my way through that book. And when I finished, I read through it again and again. Each time, finding my own unique way to decode the words. That was my light bulb moment. I found a strategy that worked for me. I'm now 16, and I can read and spell at the level of a college graduate. I can read at a rate of about 100 pages per hour. I'm also on the teen advisory board for the Allen County Public Library, this library right here. Part of my job involves reading over 100 novels per year before they get published, and providing feedback to the authors, publishers, and illustrators. I'm also an Eagle Scout. My project to achieve the Eagle Scout rank was to create a dyslexic-friendly book list for young children with dyslexia available at this library. Ms. Lill mentioned it earlier. And that book list was posted by the Allen County Library to their website, for use by all the libraries across the nation. I also wrote an interactive ebook about dyslexia for children. That's available free for my kids. I still use technology for a lot of my coursework, because I'm a techie and because handwriting is difficult for me. But I no longer require these assistive technologies or any accommodations. That's not to say that dyslexia doesn't trip me up now and then. For example, I still have trouble remembering long lists occasionally, but I've solved the reading puzzle. And I believe that with the right encouragement, opportunities, and support, everyone can do it. It is the support that I want to focus on with my organization, Dyslexic Kids. Most parents have provided the encouragement and the opportunities, and support somewhat. But it is crucial for children to find support among their peers as well. If you feel like you're an outcast, if you feel alone, it is far more difficult to focus on learning to read, and on other subjects. Your lower zones of self-esteem can cloud your mind. It's important to find friends your age who can understand you and understand what you're going through. When I was trying to overcome my dyslexia, I searched for a support group like that, but none existed. There are plenty of support groups for the parents and teachers, but there are no support groups for people who need it most, the children and teens who are actually trying to overcome the dyslexia. I decided to create one myself, and 2 years ago, I started the Dyslexic Kids organization. It started out with a website, dyslexickids.net. I have business cards over there on that table if you want to visit it. But it's grown to include support groups and free tutoring. It's also included something else. I now post news and information every workday to all the major social networks. So Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Pinterest, Google+, and WordPress. During an average week, I reach about 20,000 people across the globe. And I've reached as many as 100,000. I post breaking news about anything that impacts children with dyslexia on those social networks. That includes the newest assistive technology. I'll be sharing a few of the hottest items with you at 4 o'clock upstairs in the young adult section. But be sure to follow me on your favorite social network for all the latest news, reviews, and demonstrations. Remember that organization I mentioned that I would come back to a while ago, Eastern Seals Crossroads? I'm going to be talking more about them now. Some of the assistive technologies that I post about are available for you to use free as an Indiana resident. Eastern Seals Crossroads has a free lending library of assistive technologies. They'll deliver the device to your home, teach you how to use it, and allow you to keep it to try out for 30 days or more at no charge. Some of the technology that they provide, I'm going to go over real quick. There's a smart pen. That you can write with it, yes. But it also records audio while you're writing with it. And it uploads the audio that's recorded and the notes you write down to your Evernote account. The audio can even be transcribed for you. Eastern Seals will also provide computers loaded with software, such as the Win software. That uses optical character recognition to scan documents and read them to you. Essentially, that means the computer is able to recognize a letter or word as a sound and you read it. They also provide the Curse Whale software, which is a text-to-speech software that will highlight a sentence in one color, and then each word in a different color as it reads to you, so you can read along with it. They also provide TextHelp, Read and Write Gold. That's a text-to-speech program capable of reading PDF files to you. They'll also provide iPads loaded with apps like the Dragon Dictation speech-to-text app. During my support group meetings, we have hands-on demonstrations of different technologies. And I thought some of you might like to try out some of those technologies. If so, again, you can join me in the young adult section at 4 o'clock. Now, other than the technology, the other focus of Dyslexic Kids is to build the self-esteem and confidence of the members. I try to focus on the positive aspects of dyslexia. Now, some people might see dyslexia as a bad thing, like you have the wrong set of genes. And I don't deny that having dyslexia can create a lot of challenges. But for the most part, I think that I'm lucky to have dyslexia. But I sometimes feel sorry for those who don't. Their worlds are not nearly as colorful as mine. And most people can learn how to read. It might take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but for the most part, reading can be taught. And even if you can't, those assistive technologies I mentioned earlier exist so that reading is no longer necessary in many situations. A machine can now do many of those tasks for us. But many of the gifts and talents that come with dyslexia are difficult or impossible to teach. Creativity, 3D thinking, and the ability to see the big picture are skills that are vitally important to being successful in business and in life. Those are skills that can be taught, either have them or you don't. And there's no assistive technology to make up for the lack of those skills. So which would you rather have? The ability to perform tasks that any number of computers can now do for us? Or the ability to see things in a way that some of the most successful people in the world, like Albert Einstein, Richard Branson, Walt Disney, and Thomas Edison, were able to see them? All of those people did or do have dyslexia. Given a choice, I would choose dyslexia. The goals of dyslexic kids are to raise awareness and to provide news, information, tutoring, and support to children and teens with dyslexia. No child with dyslexia should ever feel alone, and it is my hope that the Dyslexic Kids organization can continue to help children with dyslexia across the globe feel supported, connected, and surrounded by friends who understand them. Thank you all for listening. Also, thanks to our speakers, Kristen Baxter from the Dyslexia Institute of Indiana,
Good job.
Lori Gray, attorney and author, and Chris Lill. And a big thanks to the Allen County Public Library for allowing us to use this space, for their continued support, and for all of the resources they provide to children with dyslexia.